Chapter 7, Pulp Fiction. Your asses would be dead as fucking fried chicken, but you happen to pull this shit while I'm in a transitional period. So, I don't want to kill you, I want to help you. Jules, Pulp Fiction. My head spun with the image of the kid on the pavement. If he didn't die, he would suffer for months, drugged and numb from his injuries, fearful of leaving his house, worried about gang retaliation. All for what? So strangers could flex a muscle and prove their allegiance to a biker club. Across from me, Psycho dozed, jerking with the bus's movements, and I marveled that he could sleep at all. Vagos were criminals always. They didn't have downtime or conscience or moments where they lived any kind of normal. Undercover operatives debriefed, had hours, sometimes even days where they decompressed, but not bikers, not me. Safety dictated that I pretend to cherish the life and just not the criminal enterprise. I had committed no assault. I knew I would be released. I was okay. California Penal Code 186.22, the STEP Act. Kaz explained to me later. This was the Street Terrorism Enforcement and Prevention Act, which adds time to sentences for being a gang member. I cradled the phone between my shoulder and ear and squeezed my eyes shut. Fever pounded in my head as Kaz elaborated, and I heard only snippets of his plan. Best to proceed as normal. No one but Sergeant Benston knows who you are. Benston was head of the San Bernardino gang unit. Local law enforcement couldn't be trusted with the knowledge of a federal investigation. In fact, the ATF already knew of 4 San Bernardino sheriff's deputies who regularly supplied sensitive information to the Vagos. Kaz and I agreed to inform the U.S. Attorney's Office about my arrest and instruct them to keep me incarcerated in the state judicial system until it became absolutely necessary to intervene with the local district attorney's office. The judge set our bail at $50,000 each. Psycho looked smug. He planned to be gone the next morning. He had people on the outside with cash. Meanwhile, deputies hustled us into a holding cell. The walls smelled of wet stone. My palms sweated on the steel bars. Psycho crouched low. His toes, the only body parts without ink, were exposed through the jail-issued sandals. They looked unnatural, sickly, white, like the underbelly of a fish. He mumbled something about scalping off his Vagos tattoos and denying any affiliation with the gang. Familiar claustrophobia enveloped me. We had been dropped in a cage with no skylight. Shock and hurt slid behind Russ's eyes as he absorbed Psycho's betrayal. I couldn't believe that Psycho had renounced his own leadership either. But I used his weakness to my advantage. All color drained from Joe's face. Hang-around Walter clenched and unclenched his fist. Puffy bags framed his pale eyes. His expression cold and distant, broken already by a system meant to break people like him. Deputies targeted Walter, Joe's half-brother, and pegged him as a Vago. Because he was already on parole, they placed him with the Aryan Brotherhood, where he received lockdown in a super maximum security unit. Survival instincts kicked in. My emotions shut down, and although I knew my fate was temporary, the knowledge didn't erase my apprehension. At least for now, I was a gangster and a felon. According to the jail's classification system, I belonged in the murder unit. This newer facility was an octagon-shaped jail containing a single guard tower surrounded by 6 steel tanks, 36 cells, 2 levels deep. Each housed 70 killers awaiting sentencing. A glass front panel allowed deputies access into each coffin-like containment. We were shuffled inside, segregated by race in our cells. The F-tank, dubbed the Fag Unit by inmates, held the transvestites and homosexuals. Psycho and Bandit shuffled apart to different tanks opposite of mine. I squeezed into the C-tank with 6 other whites and several Hispanics and blacks. Deputies led Joe, Rust, and Walter to different units, and I lost sight of them. Each tank served as a microcosm of society, a cultural pocket that dictated rank and protocol. And although the guards controlled by force and dissent, real manipulation existed inside among the inmates. I never got used to eyes watching me or the constant noise, moans, screams, toilets flushing, chains rattling, batons smacking against glass. We pissed, shit, slept in front of someone. But the dehumanization began with the clothes, shapeless orange scrubs made of thin cotton. Tough killers reduced to convention and sameness. The strong survive, the weak shrivel with fear. I could do this for one night. Warm air constricted me like a noose around my throat. The normal process was to post bail. The next morning, Psycho and I, chained together, attended our bail hearing. We opted for the physical experience of the courtroom rather than a video screen prompt and a borrowed public defender. The court considered the Vagos, more than any other organized gang, an extreme public threat and ordered a full SWAT team to guard the perimeter and interior of the courthouse. At least 12 armed deputies lined the jury box. And while the show of force may have served as protection for the judge and spectators, it also had an unfortunate consequence. It inflated the Vagos' terrorist-like persona. Psycho, confident that his release was imminent, assured me the club would loan me 10% toward my $50,000 bail. Kaz promised to pay the rest in a week. Warm air filtered through the ducts inside the courtroom. A hint of peroxide skimmed my nostrils. Long rectangular windows sealed out sunlight. A young prosecutor, maybe no more than 30, clicked across the floor. She huddled at the bench with the defense counsel, her face animated, blonde head shaking side to side. This couldn't be good. She insisted $50,000 was too low, that the Vagos ran a terror campaign and that their brutality knew no limits. The judge agreed, increased our bail to $500,000 and ended the verbal ping pong. I could go to the DA right now, Kaz assured me as soon as I could reach the phone. No, I was adamant. That would just invite suspicion. Let's wait. None of the witnesses had mentioned my involvement in the fight. I figured the DA would either reduce my bond or drop my charges altogether based on the lack of evidence. We can post your bail, I know. And while we formulated a plan that would keep me safe, protect my cover, and preserve the integrity of the investigation, I returned to the murder unit. Once a week, cellies in each tank enjoyed an hour outside in the concrete yard unless the lone deputy forgot or confused the rotation. If that happened, an entire cell would suffer a week without exercise. The space consisted of 4 walls and a shaded bulb to stimulate a colorless outdoor sky. Mostly, the yard offered a chance to stretch. Some races clustered together for a fierce game of handball, the sound of balls bouncing on concrete, eerily similar to fists hitting bone. The murder unit was run by 2 disinterested deputies. They announced day-to-day routines with whistles that signified meals, yards, lights out. But really, the Aryan Brotherhood, a white supremacist prison gang, controlled the woods, their moniker for whites, throughout the complex. Each race ruled its own. The Mexican Mafia, housed in another unit entirely, dictated the rules for the Hispanics in the murder unit. The Bloods and Crips ruled the blacks, and so forth. Each tank equipped with an open bathroom and a so-called day room where meals occurred offered the illusion of humanity. But in fact, the amenities created an opportunity for abuse. Once the steel doors of our cells buzzed open for meals and we funneled to one of the 15 tables, the deputies' attentions diverted. I shared a cell with Jan, a tall Mormon who resembled an SS guard, with pale skin, a tuft of blonde hair cropped close to the scalp, and cold reptilian eyes. He had been in the murder unit since his 18th birthday 2 years earlier. I stabbed my girlfriend's mother in the throat 30 times, he volunteered matter-of-factly by way of introduction. I'm a virgin. Already my first few minutes in the cell seemed too long. Jan prattled on about his tortured childhood, his parents who kicked him out, his girlfriend's mother who had tried to give him a blowjob in the parking lot of a grocery strip mall, and she got what she deserved. Fucking bitch, he spat, then leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Why, Jan? Why, Jan? He mimicked, reliving his mother's last pleas. Next, he described in chilling detail the spurting blood from the cuts in her neck, how she burped, farted, until she expired. Jan shuddered, then closed his eyes at the memory, as if the whole retelling somehow aroused him. When I get out of here, his eyes fluttered open, I'm going to be a serial killer.